What is up? Daniel here with the Virtual Robotics Studio, and we are back now. It's actually after kickoff. We waited. And last year, we did our software setup and our programming on the beta version of software. There were some changes between the beta version and then the actual in-season release. So this year, we waited. We're now filming this after kickoff so we can use the exact same software versions that you will probably be using. All right, so for this video, we're going to need the robot. We're going to have to update the RoboRio. We're going to have to update our power distribution hub and all of our SparkMax speed controllers. We're also going to install all of the software that we need on the computer. And then there are a few cables you're going to want to find. So there's this one, which is a USB A to C cable. I guess a USB C to C would work if you have a USB C on your laptop. But this one came in the power distribution hub box. I think there are shorter ones that came with each of the SparkMaxes, so those will work as well. But I like the longer ones so I don't have to get my computer right inside the robot. You'll also need this USB A to, I think this is B, I don't know, it's the printer one. It's the squarish end on it. So this one will plug into our RoboRio, so we're going to use that to set the team number on our RoboRio. And then finally, there's a micro SD card in the RoboRio that we have to flash and update. So there is an adapter in, I think I found this in the gray tote. And this one also was in the gray tote. So this will let me plug that micro SD card into my laptop. If you have a different kind of adapter, that's going to also work fine. So we're going to need all those things and your laptop, and then we're going to get everything updated. Then we can start programming. But before we get started on all of that, we've got to give another special thanks to Argosy for making this all possible, to First and Andymark for parts and support, and to Team 302, Lake Orion High School, for hosting our studio. OK, so the first thing I want to do is basically download and install all the software that we're going to use. Then once it's all installed, we can start setting stuff up. So the one website you need to be aware of. OK, so the first thing I want to do is basically download and install all the software that we're going to use. Then once it's all installed, we can start setting stuff up. So the one website you need to be aware of, this is sort of where everything branches off from, is this docs.wpilive.org. And then we're English stable index. But I think if you just go to docs.wpilive.org, it will refresh to the page that I was on. That's the default page for it. And this has a few things. So we've got like building your robot, and there's some stuff there. But we want to jump down to step 2 on this left-hand side, which is installing software. And we've got a bunch of options here. So there is offline installation preparation. So you can go here to download the full files, or we can just click on the individual things that we need as we go. So everybody needs the game tools, FRC game tools. You only need LabVIEW for FRC if you're going to program in LabVIEW. So I'm going to skip down to installing the FRC game tools because we're going to be programming in Java. So if you click on that and we scroll down, there is download game tools, navigate to the FRC game tools from NI. Now for the game tools, the FRC game tools from National Instruments, you will need to create an account. I already have. So if I click on the FRC game tools, it's going to pop us up to that website. You can see I'm logged in, but there will be a login button up here if you don't have an account yet. And it's free. You just got to sign up for it. But that's the only way to get it. And then we're going to hit this download button over here. And sure, we'll save it. OK, and then once that's done downloading, I'll open that folder up, and I'll go ahead and run it. And we're basically just going to say yes to everything as it goes through its process of installing stuff. OK, so it might take a second here. We're going to accept the license agreement, say yes. I have not had a problem unchecking disable Windows Fast Startup. So I think this is kind of optional, but it does seem to recommend doing that. So I'll go ahead and leave it checked just for safety's sake. And then this is going to install the game tools and some runtime environments, and that seems good to me. So we'll click Next and let it do its thing. All right, so that took, I don't know, my computer about 1.5 minutes, say. So obviously, if your computer is faster or slower, you might get slightly different times. And then it says a reboot is needed in order to complete the operation. You should probably just reboot. All right, we're rebooted. I went back to the WPI Live page. So the same page we were on installing the FRC game tools. We're now done with that. You should see it should have made a couple of shortcuts on the desktop. One of them is FRC driver station. and one is the RoboRio imaging tool. You can also check for them on the start menu if they didn't end up making a shortcut here. But we're going to use the imaging tool to get the file and set up our team number on our RoboRio, and then driver station we're going to use all the time to actually control the robot. But we're not done installing software. So if we jump back to our WPI Lib page, I think you can go all the way to the bottom and click Next, or on the side here, in step 2, we can jump down to WPI Lib installation guide. And if you're using Java or, I believe, C++, this is the one you need to install. Of course, if you're doing Python, do the Python installation guide. If you're doing LabVIEW, do the LabVIEW. But if you're doing LabVIEW, you should have done that before installing the game tools. All right, so for Java, we're doing WPI Lib installation guide. Let's scroll down and find the download for Windows. I guess you can download for other platforms too if you're not on Windows. We're on, I think my computer's still Windows 10. So we'll go ahead and click that download and save it. OK, download is finished. So I'm going to go to my downloads folder here and run it. So WPI Lib. And with this one, what you want to do is, if you want it to open with Windows, so if you have something like 7-zip, which was trying to open it for me, we don't want that. If you go to right-click it and choose Open with Windows Explorer, you want to make sure you're opening it with Windows Explorer. Then you can run the WPI Lib installer.exe. And this will probably happen on your computer. So Windows is protecting me, but I disagree with Windows. And so to be able to install it, you have to click More Info. And then you have the option to choose Run Anyway. There we go. All right. So if it takes a second, that's fine. Just be patient. So we'll click Start. And we'll install everything. You can install just for the user that you're logged in on or for all users. I'm just going to do all users. And if you're only installing it on one computer, the fastest and easiest one to do is to choose Download for this computer only. So I'm going to click on that. And it's going to do a quick download over here. This one is smaller file than the original one that we downloaded. So this should go much faster. Once it's done, we can click Next. And now it's going to do the installation. This is going to take a few minutes. All right, and if you get any pop-ups like this, just click Yes. And that is pretty much the end. So finished installing. That took, again, a little under 2 minutes on my computer. And we can just say Finish. All right, so WPI Lib is now installed. And we can actually keep following this. If you go to Next Steps, it's going to tell us what we want to do next, which is just sort of like creating a program, deploying code, third-party libraries. We have some more things to set up here, though, and that is if we go down to Step 3, Preparing Your Robot. So click on Step 3 over here on the left-hand side, Preparing Your Robot. And we're going to need to image our RoboRio, and we're going to have to also program our radio. So let's start with the RoboRio. If you're new this year, you have a RoboRio 2. That if it has the SD card, the flash card that you can take out, then you have a RoboRio 2. If you don't have that card, then it's a RoboRio 1. I think also, yeah, it's written on it. So if it says RoboRio 2.0, it's a RoboRio 2 right here. And if it doesn't have that written on it, it's probably a RoboRio 1. So that said, we're going to do the Imaging Your RoboRio 2 page. So I'll click on that one. Okay, so for imaging the RoboRio 2, there's a lot of extra information here, even a short video. So you can feel free to check that stuff out. The thing that we're looking for is that we are going to get the card. We need to get the card value or file, basically, from here, from our RoboRio imaging tool. And then we need to write the image with one of these programs, either Balena Etcher or the Raspberry Pi Imager. And I've always used the first one, this Balena Etcher. So I'm going to go ahead and click Install that, which will take me to their page. And I will reject all their cookies. Download Etcher. And I'm going to do it for Windows, because I'm on Windows, obviously, if you're on something else. And we'll download that file. This one should be pretty small. All right. And then I think I can just click on it there to run it. OK. So that is running and ready to go. And now what we need to do is we need to run this RoboRio imaging tool. So if you double click on the RoboRio imaging tool, that is going to pop up. It's going to search now for any connected, basically National Instruments things. But it's basically looking for RoboRios right now. And that you can see on the bottom, searching for RoboRio targets. While it's doing that, we're going to need to take the SD card, that micro SD card, out of our RoboRio. So that is located in the robot, of course, right next to, we got the power on one side, and then we've got that square plug that we're going to use later, and then the Ethernet ports over here. But in between those, there's this little spot where you can just kind of push down and get the little card here to pop up. And then I can take that little card out. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into my adapter here so it fits into my computer. All right? And then that will take over and just plug it into your computer. So if you have a different adapter to make that work, go ahead and do that. But we just need that plugged in, and it's going to pop up, and it might prompt you to format the disk. And I'm just going to say, no, please don't do anything to this. I know I can't use it. OK, I had to click cancel like 6 times there. That's fine. All right. Now, our RoboRio imaging tool is done searching. And what we can do now is there is an image here. So we have 22.5.0 CFG. And in the corner of that, there is a little folder that says SD. So if you click on that folder, it's going to pop up the folder where the images are held. And if we go into SD images, this one right here, this file right here, is the file that we want to write with Balena Etcher. So if I go to Etcher and I say flash from file, it's going to ask for the file. And I need to make sure I'm in this folder with this file. And actually, in Windows, if you click up here on this address bar, you can actually copy this whole address. And then over here, I think this is the wrong version, but maybe it found it. But you can paste that in and press Enter. And it looks like I was in the right spot. So maybe it knew, or I've used it before. But you should be seeing FRC RoboRio 2 2025 version 2.0 image. All right, so select that image and say Open. OK, now we have the image that we're going to write. Next, we have to tell it where to write the image to. So select Target. You should have a SDHC card. I don't know why it shows up as 3 different drive letters, but that's OK. Check that card that's showing up. I guess there's one hidden one. That is my system drive. Don't pick that. So we're going to select the one that is the SD card, and then click Flash. And we are just going to basically say yes to anything that pops up. And this is, again, going to take a little bit of time. It's decompressing. And now it's writing, the flashing. And this is going to take, I don't know, ETA 25 seconds. OK, and once it finished, all these things are going to pop up again. Windows still wants to format the drive. I don't want it to, so I'm going to, again, click cancels and OKs on everything until that goes away. OK, and make sure you get to this page where it says Flash completed, 1 successful target. At this point, you can take the card out, and then we're going to go ahead and put it back into the robot. So I'll take the small one out, and the writing, when we go to put this in, the writing should be facing towards the power plug. And then they're like the little pins or little wires that you can see on one side. That should be facing towards our Ethernet cable, and then the other USB-A ports. And we need to make sure this is pushed down all the way so it clicks in. So you'll actually hear it and feel it click in, and it'll stay flat with the surface here. All right. Then, I guess on my computer, I'm going to close Balena Etcher, because we don't need that anymore. I'm going to close this image thing. But we've put the proper image now on our RoboRio. We have to actually update our team number and stuff like that as well. So we now actually need to use this imaging tool. And the best way to do that is to use the USB cable that we were talking about. So one end will go into the RoboRio, into that square port over here, right next to the power. And then the other end just plug into your computer. And it just barely reaches. Of course, we're going to have to turn the robot on. So I'm going to plug it in and turn on the robot so that our RoboRio here can hopefully boot up. Yep, we have power and status. It's going to take the RoboRio about a minute to boot up. So from the time that you turn power on to the time that we'll be able to find it on the computer, again, it's roughly a minute. So while it's booting up, though, if we go back to our imaging tool, you can either close this and rerun it so it starts searching again, or you can just hit rescan. And it might not have been a full minute, but I'll let it scan, and if it doesn't find anything, I'll click rescan again. Okay, and you can see it's searching for RoboRio targets. This could take, a minute of searching. We'll see. I think it is definitely booted up now, so we will hopefully be able to see it. Okay, it did not find it, so under targets it says no target found. That's okay. Just click rescan again. This time it found it pretty quickly. So there is a target here. We have a MAC address, an IP address, and all of that. And we can see it's FRC RoboRio 2, 2025 version 2.0. That is the version we flashed on the card, so that's good to see. And all we have to do is we're going to edit the startup settings here. And the only thing we have to add is team number. And if I look at my bumpers, I think the team number I used was 2378. Of course, you will use your team number. I think we chose this one because that was the remaining templates I had, spray paint templates that I had. So 2378, and then we're going to click Apply. And so this is going to set that team number on the RoboRio, which will change the IP address of the RoboRio. That's how everything finds each other to communicate. And really, it just reboots it and double checks that that's there. And then I think we'll get a message that tells us, even though you've done all of this, your robot's not going to work because you don't have any code on it. But we'll let it do its thing. OK, and we get RoboRio image was successfully updated. The host name is now RoboRio team number FRC. And it says you must deploy code to use the robot. So we'll say OK. And then we can close this RoboRio imaging tool down. So our RoboRio is now set. I think it's completely updated, ready for us to start programming. But we do have to go through and we have to update all of our Spark Maxes and our power distribution hub. So the next place we have to go is, I'm just going to search for it, but we need REV Robotics Hardware Client. So REV Robotics Hardware found it, but we're going to REV Hardware Client Overview. And on the side, again, this is sort of like the same setup, page setup as WPI Live, but we're looking for Getting Started Installation. If you click on Installation, download the latest version, REV Hardware Client version 1.7.0. So I will click on that and download that. Looks like that one is pretty small. That says done, but like the bar is not gone yet. There we go. All right, so we can run that program. Yes. And install. So this program is from REV Robotics. REV Robotics is the maker of the, REV Robotics Spark Max and the REV Robotics Power Distribution Hub, as they are labeled in your robot. And all of those need basically firmware updates. And for the Spark Maxes, because we're using CAN, we have to basically give each device an ID so that we can say, hey, ID 0 or ID 1, you are this motor when we set everything up. And that's what we're going to also do in this REV Hardware Client. So we have what, 4 drive motors, 2 left motors, 2 right motors, and then we have our 1 coral motor, shooter motor, or release motor that we're going to also have hooked up to. I think that's called they call that the roller motor. So we're going to set all of those up with those identities and IDs so that when we get into the program and we want to control something specifically, everything on the hardware side is mapped and ready to go. All right, we are done. Yes, I want to run it anyway, so I'll leave that checked and I'll click Finish. And then this is the REV Hardware Client. And what we're getting right now is no hardware detected. And that's fine because we haven't plugged in yet. So I'm going to get that long USB A to C cable. I can undo the one that we have currently in the RoboRio. Get rid of that. And now we'll take this one and let's go ahead and plug it into the power distribution hub. So right next to where the CAN wires can get plugged in, the yellow and green ports kind of here next to where the main battery goes in, there's a little USB-C slot. And then I'm going to plug the other end into my computer. OK, and as soon as I plug it in, it pops up here. I can see the REV Power Distribution Hub. And actually, we can also see some of the Spark Max controllers showing up as well. So I'm going to click on the Power Distribution Hub. And this wants a CAN ID. I'm going to set the CAN ID for this to, well, it looks like our other ones are at 0 right now. I'm going to make this just some number that's out of the way. So let's make it 10, say. Basically, we have 6 devices. Sorry, the Power Distribution Hub and 5 Spark Maxes. And they all need a unique ID. But looking down here on the CAN bus, I can see that the Spark Max motor controllers are at 0 already. So I don't want to set this one to 0. Thus, I'm choosing 10. But you can choose any number. My plan is to do our 2 left motors as 1 and 2. Our 2 right drive motors as 3 and 4. And then the roller motor up top as 5. OK. So this now, there's a few things that we can see. For example, it's going to tell us like channel 20 tripped or missing, channel 23 tripped or missing, but 21 and 22 are OK. Well, those are the fuses that we plugged in earlier. So just above where we plugged our USB cable in, you'll see that there are 4 ports there labeled 20, 21, 22, and 23. And we put 2 fuses in, one for the RoboRio, one for the radio. And that's what we're seeing on the screen is 21 and 22 are OK. They're currently pulling 0.5 or 0.3 amps. And everything is good. But the other 2, we're not using them, so that makes sense. They should have no breakers. Then same thing, if you look at the high current channels, we have a bunch where it's missing, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 OKs, and that's where we plugged in the fuses earlier. So that's all of these channels here where we actually put the fuses and attach them. OK, so that all looks fine. There is this clear sticky fault, so we don't need to do that because we don't have any faults that we're worried about. The only thing that we're trying to do here is to check for updates. So in order to do this, make sure your laptop is still connected to the internet. And then you can go ahead and click check for updates. And it will go out and it will see if there's any updates. And then we can actually choose update all. And hopefully this will update everything. So there is at least one power distribution hub, which is going to get updated, and at least one Spark Max controller. I don't know if it's going to get all the Spark Max controllers. We will check that as we go. But just click the update button. And let it do its thing. OK, so this is Power Distribution Hub firmware. It deleted the old firmware. Now it is updating to the new firmware. And like I said, we're only seeing one Spark Max motor controller right now because they're all brand new out of the box. They're all set up to be ID 0. And so sometimes when you have a bunch of things that are all the same ID, they look like just one object. There are other ones hiding kind of behind whichever one's first in line there. So if it does update all of them here, that's great. If not, we'll update them as we go through and change the IDs. All right, so it said it was restarting the hub, and the update was complete. So now if I click on Spark Max Motor Controller, you can see that it is not configured. And basically now we got to go through and fix some of that stuff. So there are a bunch of different things that we can see here. We're going to set up all of the motor type. A lot of the rest of this, we're going to set it up in the program. But there are some things you can set up here. There are some more advanced settings that you can do. A lot of these settings are going to be more for brushless motors, if you're using brushless motors. Not so much for the basic motor that we're using, brush motor. But we can see this one also does need an update. All right, so we need to go through and change the CAN IDs for stuff. There is a button up here which says Identify Device. And if you click on that, hopefully you get a Spark Max that blinks fast. Mine are all doing the same thing, even when I click that button. I just see the same slow blink on all of them. So this might be that we need to update them to get it working. we're just going to blindly change the addresses, and then we'll come back and we can change them to what we actually want later. So I said we're going to use 1 through 5. I guess in this case, if we use, we'll do like 11 through 15, and then we can change them down when it's done. So I'm going to change it to 11. All of our motors are sim motors, which are not brush motors. So are brush motors, sorry. So under motor type, it defaults to the REV Neo brushless. We're going to change to brushed. And then for sensor type, it doesn't really matter, but we're going to also change to no sensor brushless unless you installed the encoder on the drivetrain, in which case you can choose encoder for that motor. And then you'll have to choose how many counts per revolution are on the encoder that you installed. And we don't really have to change anything else on this page, I don't think. So we're going to go ahead and so we're going to hit the refresh button here. And that should show us the new updated values here. The save configuration button is like if you want a backup file so that you can re-upload it later. So if you're changing stuff or you have a bunch of specific stuff updated, we're not doing anything complicated enough to worry about that. But if you're in the advanced and you're doing a bunch of different things, you can do it that way. Now, we do have the ability to run the motor, and we could use this to try to figure out which motor it is. But I don't want to go to that unless we can't get the light thing working. So there are some faults here. I guess we can clear the sticky faults and see if that lets the light show up. So now everything is showing as OK on this one. So I'm going to click the Identify Device button again, and let's see if anything flashes for us. Nope, they're all blinking the same way again, right? So we would expect one of them to do something different if this button were working. So let's go ahead and do the next step then, which I guess is let's update. So on the update page, it is out of date. We have 1.4.0 and we need 25.0.1. That feels like a pretty big update. So we're going to click Update here, and it's going to download it. And then just like with the Power Distribution Hub, it's going to erase, and then it is going to write the new value to it. And I think you could have done that too from here, where we're updating on 1 of 2. But I kind of got nervous because we had only 1 SparkMax showing, and I want kind of to see all of them at some point. So we can see now that that one is updated, or is mostly updated, getting to the point where it's updated, another SparkMax showed up. So basically, as we're moving them off of that ID 0 and getting them set up, we should hopefully be able to see all of them. And then hopefully we can use the light then to identify our objects. So let's see, we see already down. It just looks like it's still thinking. It's still working on it. So I will give it some time here. What else do we have? We have a warning that says ensure that the CAN bus is terminated on both ends when updating device firmware. And all of our stuff is connected to our full kind of CAN loop, where we have the terminating resistor in the Power Distribution Hub and in the RoboRio. And those are the 2 ends of sort of our chain of devices. So that should be fine. This definitely feels like it's taking longer than I would expect. We will kind of let that do its thing. Let's go to the next device. So we have another SparkMax controller here. And if we go to basic, again, we don't know which one this is yet, because if I click blink, oh, wait. This time it's blinking. That's cool. So if I click blink on this new one, and you can click here too as well. Oh, well, you know what? That's not helpful. We do get the response that we want. Which is like this one is fast blinking. Unfortunately, I think they're all fast blinking when I click on it. So basically everything that we didn't change is showing up as the device when I click here. So let me see. Click one more time. Yeah, they're all kind of doing the fast blink. So we still don't know which one's which. Let's change the ID of this one. Let's make this one 12. Let's go to a brushed motor. And this one doesn't have the pull-down menu of the thing as well to change the type. So that's fine. We don't really care about changing that. We can clear the faults. And we are going to click the refresh configuration. And then let's go to update. And it says already current version 25.0.1, recommended version 25. So this one is updated. Huh. So if we go back to 11, this one is not updated. So I'm not really sure what is going on. Like somehow maybe I changed the number of the wrong one. Either way, we have the update available for this one. So I'm going to go back to this one and click that update button again. I feel like it updated a different one. It updated the one that we changed to be number 12 instead of the one that was numbered 11. So we'll let it do its update. And then we should hopefully get another. We can also view our progress on this. Oh, I see. So we are writing SparkMax firmware. And so this might be going on in the background, updating all of our SparkMaxes, or that's referring to the one that I just clicked on. I'm not sure, since we did click on that Update All button earlier. Okay, but this one is finishing up. We're hoping to be able to find another device now as that one finishes up. So we're kind of on that. But down here in the bottom left, there's scan for devices. So now that in theory we've changed some of our addresses, we can try to scan for devices. And interestingly enough, some of them have disappeared. So we can see if we go to, okay, update software is not showing us anything anymore. I do see on the REV PDH, since I'm in here, there are some sticky faults that we can clear. That shouldn't affect anything for what we're doing right now. I'm going to scan for devices again here. And I'm still only seeing the one SparkMax. It is up to date, though. What happens if I click on it now? Are they all blinking? Yes, they are all blinking still. OK. Interesting. And our update software button, I can no longer see the progress. I think I'm going to close this program, and then I'm going to run it again. And let it rescan hardware from scratch. OK. So this is the data that's getting sent. We can see the power distribution module is there, and controller 12 is there, but I see 5 controller 12s. But that might be 5 different messages that it sent. Let's scan for device again. OK. Let's try changing this CAN ID again to a different number. So I'm going to just go to 20. To 20. There we go. And let's update that and see if we can find another device now. No, so we're really just finding one SparkMax. OK. So hopefully for you, extra devices are showing up simply. they are not doing that for me. So we're going to try a couple of other methods to troubleshoot this issue. Okay, so one of the things that we can try doing is if we turn the robot off, we're still powering our PDH basically from the USB port. None of the other devices are going to be powered up. So what this will let us do is, if we unplug from the PDH but plug into our first motor controller, I guess I'll go all the way on this end and plug in, we will be powering just enough, not enough to actually drive the motors and stuff, but we do have the light blinking on this SparkMax speed controller. And if we go over and look at our hardware client here, we can see that there is one motor controller that is connected, and it is that one. So if I click on that, we can now choose. This one is the one that's connected up to the roller. So that's our roller motor. So in here, I think I want roller to be 5. We're going to do left drive as 1 and 2, right drive as 3 and 4, and our roller motor can be ID 5. And we're going to, again, choose brushed. And on the Spark Maxes especially, we have to click this persist parameters button down here, which will change it to a brushed motor. And then click yes. Permanently save parameters, CAN ID 5. So we can see CAN ID 5 is showing up over here. There's some sticky faults. You can just clear those whenever you want. I think gate driver fault or 12 volt missing, that makes sense because we do not have 12 volts power because we turned the robot off. So that's exactly what we would expect to see there. Don't worry about that fault. All right, let's unplug it. Let's move over to the next Spark Max here and plug that in. All right, good. Yep, so we have another one showing up. And this is like they're all showing as 11 right now. I think maybe we changed all of their IDs, but that's fine. This one now is going to be left drive, so this can be a number 1. And I'm going to go to brushed. So just double check, trace your wires so you know where it's going and what it's connected to. And one brushed persist parameters, yes, change to a brushed motor. And I think what we're seeing too is now it's doing encoder type quadrature. It's that like no encoder doesn't hurt anything. So I think the updated version made that change. So this is number 1 now, and we can see the device is number 1. That looks good. Let's move over to the next one. All right, and then again, I can know these wires are going also to the left drive. So we'll click on that and change that to number 2, also a brushed motor, and we'll do persist. All right, looks good. Let's move it over to the next one. So our next 2 are going to be the right drive motor, which we want 3 and 4. So I guess I just get to go in order. I can do 3 for this one and then 4 for the last one. So we're plugged in, change this one to number 3, and make it a brushed motor, and save it. OK, saved. Looks good. Let's move to the last one. And so this one can be number 4, also a brushed motor. Let's save that one as well. OK, so in theory, we just changed all of the IDs. I'm going to go ahead and move this plug over to, I'll put it back in the hub. I don't know why. It just feels like then I'm not in a specific Spark Max. Then we're going to go ahead and power up the robot. And the hope is we can see all of our devices now. And we can. Good. All right, so we have our power distribution hub on 10. It's fine. Doesn't really matter what that CAN ID is because we're not going to talk to it directly. Then we have a motor controller on 1, ID 1, ID 2, ID 3, ID 4, and ID 5. And let's actually try, now that they're all mixed up like this, if we click the identify button, does it actually blink them? Yes. So I know I got some extra wires here in the way, but this should be number 1 right here. So we're looking at this. And when I click the flash button, that one is flashing purple. The rest are continuing to flash orange. So once we got them on separate IDs, then it worked out. But it looks like we needed to connect to each one individually just to get them split off from their IDs. And then all of mine are showing as updated. But if you still have any that say they need updates, either click the update all or go through and do the individual updates for them. All right, that should be all we have to do with the Spark Max, the REV Hardware Client. So I'm going to close that down. And we'll go back to this WPI Live page. We are now done imaging our RoboRio and setting up our other devices. There is one more setup thing that we have to do, and that is the radio. So I think programming your radio is the last step here. So this guide will show us how to do a basic setup for controlling your at-home radio. OK. So we need to get to the web configuration page. So we need to connect the radio directly to our computer using an Ethernet cable. That is the first step. So on the robot, I still have this USB cable plugged in here. I'm going to get rid of that. We are done with that cable now. And I need to have an Ethernet cable plugged in from the radio to my computer. And we can use, well, let's see. We need to be in the DS port, which is the top port here. So if you don't have another Ethernet cable, you can reuse the one that's on the robot. But of course, that one is zip tied in a bunch of places. So it's going to be easier if we just grab a second Ethernet cable and use that one instead. So give me a second to go find one of those. OK, found an Ethernet cable. And what I'm going to do is plug this into the DS port on the top here. OK, and then the other end will plug into my laptop. OK, so that was the first step. Then it says make sure that we have power. So on the radio, there are lights. They're lit up. So I'm happy with that. That means we've got our power here. And then it says open a web browser and navigate to radio.local. And it should be able to find this even if your Wi-Fi is still connected to a network, but we will see. So that popped up. If that doesn't pop up for you, you can try disabling your Wi-Fi or disconnecting from your Wi-Fi so that the network cable that we have plugged into the radio is the only network cable that's connected. But when you use the name like that, it should be able to figure out where it wants to go. All right. And we're going to have to do a firmware upload. We're going to have to update the firmware on the radio as well. So the first thing is, if we go on here, we can see a few things. This is our configuration. We're in robot radio mode. That's cool. We're going to need to put our team number in. I'm not going to bother doing that yet. We also are going to have WPA keys to be able to connect to it. And then down here, we have the ability to choose a file to upload. And that is the firmware upload file that we're going to do. You can see, OK, configure doesn't really do anything. This one, we didn't put the file in, so that makes sense. This one, it won't let us configure it until we put a team number in and our passwords. So down here for firmware upload, we're going to have to go find the file and upload it. And so let's see. If we're on here, we can go to basically the firmware releases page for the Vivid hosting website. This is the company that makes the radio. So we're at frc-radio.vivid-hosting.net/miscellaneous/firmware-releases. And it says radios must be updated to at least 1.2.6 to be used in off-season 2024. OK, that doesn't really help us. But essentially, we need the latest version of the radio firmware here. I think they probably just didn't update their website because we are in the 2025 season. And then there's instructions on updating your firmware here. And next is firmware releases. And we're right back to the same page. So I just wanted to make sure. So this is where we're going to find the latest version of the radio. And that's what we need. So that's fine. There are four different, technically, options that we can choose. There's the access point variant. We probably don't want this if you're practicing at home. We want the radio variant. And so this is for radios from prior to 1.2.0. And this is for radios that are at 1.2 point something. And I'm not sure if there's an easy way to find out what firmware version the radio is at. Sorry, back to this page. So we're going to start with the one that's prior to 1.2 and see if that works. And if not, then we'll go ahead and try the one that's at 1.2.x. And I think attempting to do it isn't going to do anything wrong. It basically says they changed the way that their keys were working. There are two keys, I guess, a key A and a key B now. So if it doesn't work, if it's the wrong version, it just won't do anything. It's not going to like break anything. So we're going to download this file. Let me download that to my desktop because it looks like I have downloaded similar or similarly named versions in the past. So we'll download that. And you need this SHA-256 key. So you want to click copy here, or you could highlight everything and copy it manually, but the copy button is nice and easy. Then on our page where we're connected to the radio, so radio.local here, at the bottom where we're going to do the firmware, we're going to click choose file, and I put it on my desktop. So I'm looking for VH109 1.2.6. That's the version we're going to update to. Select that. And then the checksum, paste that in, Control V that in. And that basically, if those two things don't match, then it's not going to update the firmware. So we got to make sure that those match, and then click the upload button. And it is going, I believe. OK, success, new firmware received, and will be applied now. The radio will reboot several times. The firmware upgrade process is complete when the sys light is slowly blinking. So if we look at the radio, the sys light is the second one from the top. It actually, you probably can't see it on camera, but it does. What's blinking is a little SYS in green. So it's solid now. We need to wait for it to start slowly blinking. So it's basically, it's going to apply the firmware. It's going to reboot. It might actually reboot, then apply the firmware, then reboot. I don't know the whole process, but it's doing a bunch of stuff. And we're basically just waiting until it gets to the slow blinking pattern. And I don't know if that's fast blinking or slow blinking. But essentially, as long as we don't take power off until we know it's working, we have nothing to worry about. So let's go ahead and we can reload this page now. And we can see that the page is not, in fact, reloading. And the most likely cause for that is that it didn't finish updating yet. Yep, I can see it was definitely flashing quickly, and then it slowed down. It is solid now. So the note on the WPI page, live page, also when we're doing this update, it says that the radio will take approximately 2 to 3 minutes to complete firmware updates. Do not remove power during this process. So when the power light is solid and the sys light is slowly blinking at 1 hertz, so 1 blink per second, that looks pretty close to 1 blink per second now. So now we'll go ahead and try to reconnect to radio.local, and we're good. So it is rebooted. We're back in. And we can see now on the bottom, I don't know if this was showing before. I didn't see this before when I looked, but now we can see it is VH109. It's at 1.2.6, which is the version that we need. So if I go back to here, it said to be on version 1.2.6. And 1.2.5 has a potential memory corruption issue, so you definitely want to be a higher number than that. But we need the latest number for the season anyway. If your number is not 1.2.6 at this point, it's possible that you need to repeat the process, but you need to use for radios currently at 1.2.x. Because I don't know what they shipped at. Like original radios, their older radios probably shipped at like version 1.0 firmware. But then as they keep making more radios, the next iteration or the next batch might have had a later firmware. So if that's the case and it didn't update to 1.2.6, then on this page, you're going to need to download. Basically, it's the same process, but you're going to need to go down to, for radios currently at 1.2.x, and download this image, and then this key, copy this key. But it's the same process, right? On this page, you just choose that new file that we download, or that you will need to download, and paste in that new checksum, and then it'll work fine. But you can see you don't need to do both steps. They both end up at the same number, 1.2.6, 1.2.6, and both with the same date down here. So that's 11/10/2024 when they were made. So both of these files will take you to the same firmware. You only need to do the one that works for you. But since if you don't know, start with the first one. If that doesn't work, then do the second one. If on your page you do see down here that there is a firmware here, well, if it's 1.2 and not 6, then use the second firmware. If it's less than 1.2, you got to use the first firmware. All right, so now that's set up. Now we can do a configure for our team stuff. And if we go back to the WPI Live page, this is where we can kind of get that information. So we know we want to be robot radio mode. You're going to put your team number in. So we can go ahead and do that. Team number for me is 2378. Use your team number, of course. The next one, this SSID suffix, this is optional. So when looking for the robot or connecting to the robot, you are going to find that it's going to be like FRC dash something dash whatever, and the suffix is whatever you put in. So if you have a bunch of different robots and they're all the same team number, but you want to be able to differentiate them, you can do that by adding some additional information here. And I'll put something in just so we can see it pop up. I'll put high as that. Then we can set up our connections for 2.4 or 6 gigahertz. Now, before we do that, though, let's scroll down. And there's a few things that we can talk about. So there are multiple ways to set this up to make it work. One way to do this is, let me start over. There are a couple issues. One of them is this robot runs at 6 gigahertz. So most wireless is either it's the old kind that was 2.4 gigahertz wireless, or the newer kind, which is 5 gigahertz. This uses like the newest kind, which I think is like Wi-Fi 6E or something like that. But it's a version of Wi-Fi 6, but it's 6 gigahertz. And there's some rules, I guess, with that. And one of them is that you can't have an access point on the 6 gigahertz bandwidth on that spectrum that is battery powered. It has to be stationary powered. So the radio on the robot, I believe right now, is not allowed by law to broadcast. So we can't connect directly to the radio on the robot from a computer, even if your computer has 6 gigahertz wireless, because this will not be allowed to broadcast a signal. Basically, this will not be able to act as the access point to connect to, or as the router to connect to. So there are a couple of ways that you can make it work anyway. So we have one option here, which they have listed as optimal setup, which is 2 VH109 radios. In this case, we can take a second one of these radios, plug that into wall power so it can broadcast and can be the access point. Then the robot radio will connect to that one, and your computer can connect to that one, either with an Ethernet cable if you don't have 6 gigahertz wireless on your laptop or computer, or you can Wi-Fi connect if you do have 6 gigahertz. That is the best way to do it because you can run it at 6 gigahertz. You get all of the fast speed, especially if you're using camera stuff and you're passing camera streams and things like that. That higher speed is going to be helpful. But, of course, that's expensive because you have to buy a whole second radio. Next step, if you only have one radio, they do recommend, they say, hey, you could use an old radio for testing. If you're a rookie team, that's not really a viable option. The old radio also not cheap, so chances are you're not going to buy a new one. So the way that we're going to set it up today that requires no excess stuff is to enable the 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi on the VH109. So at 2.4 gigahertz, it can broadcast an SSID, and you can connect directly to it. The downsides, which is listed here, it's 2.4 gigahertz is a very noisy spectrum. There's a lot of other devices using that. So you will probably get less signal range. if you're sending a lot of camera data or a lot of information back and forth between the robot and the driver station, you might see some degradation in performance or some latency issues. That should not be a problem with the kitbot as built, but as you add to it, that might become more of an issue. Also, you can sort of check what other wireless networks are running in the area you're in. So if you do end up running into problems running it at 2.4 gigahertz, then you'll need to choose one of the other options. And I think the best option in this case is to, I mean, like buying an old radio doesn't make sense. It's the new radios, the same price or not that much more expensive. So you might as well get a second VH109 and then go through the setup for that. But to do the 2.4 gigahertz wireless, in order for that to work, there's actually a dip switch on the back of the radio that I can't remember if I flipped. I think I might have already flipped mine, just out of habit when I was putting it on. So I'm going to go to the radio here. I'm going to clip the zip ties so we can take it off. And if I pull the radio out, okay, on the back, there is a sticker here covering up stuff. And I think I want to peel that sticker off. All right. So with that sticker peeled off, not really sure what that was doing. There are 3 little dip switches here. And they each do different things. So we have aux1 PoE, aux2 PoE, but the bottom switch is labeled 2.4 gigahertz AP. And I think we need to flip that to the on side. So I'm going to actually turn the robot off. So my lights are off. All the lights are off on the radio here. Then I'll go ahead and flip that switch, that small little dip switch on the bottom, to on. There we go. You'll feel a click as it moves over. So it was a little tricky to get it to click, but once it did, that should be good. All right, that should enable the 2.4 gigahertz AP mode on the radio. So now I'm just going to stick this back into the spot. I'll zip tie that back up in a second once we have everything working. So we'll turn the robot back on. We know we've got about a minute that we're waiting here for things to reboot. And you can sort of tell how it's rebooting based on the lights on the front. So that static, when the, what was it? The power light was on and the sys light was blinking about once a second, that was more or less fully booted up. Something like that, yeah, that looks good. We expect it to take about a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and try to go back to radio.local. And we'll see. It's trying to reload the page. So I think it's not up yet. When it reloads, I think we'll lose the writing that we had in there. But that was going to disappear anyway because we rebooted everything. So it was not booted yet. OK, so I think it's definitely had enough time to boot, but still not loading. So if we go back to the WPI Live page, there is some troubleshooting tips. Let's see if it's not connecting. So up at the top here, do the firmware. Oh, no, very top. Very bottom of the page. Very bottom of the page has the troubleshooting. So here's troubleshooting. It says cannot reach whatever configuration page at radio.local, which is exactly the problem we are currently having. And you might have had this happen the first time we went in. So if that's the case, you got to make sure you go through this process then. So if we change our computer to have this settings for our network, then we can go directly to the IP address instead of trying to go to the name of it. So in order to do that, you can right-click on your wireless to choose Open Network and Internet Settings, or you can go to Windows Network. See, we want Ethernet settings. So if you want to go from the Start menu, you can find Ethernet settings and run it. If you do it from here and you do Open Network Settings, it's going to go to this page, and then we're just going to click on Ethernet. And then choose Change Adapter Options. Okay, and I have one that is the Wi-Fi, which in theory I should be able to just leave alone. Again, we'll disable that if the other steps don't work. So for Ethernet, I'm going to right click and I'm going to choose Properties. And we're looking for Internet Protocol version 4 TCP/IPv4, TCP/IPv4, and choose Properties. And now this, I want to be able to see this page at the same time. So this is what we want to update. So we have these numbers here that we need to put in over here. So looks like it's already set for me. Interesting. So 192.168.69.2, 255, 255, 255.0, 169, 168, 69, and 1. So set yours up to be like that. I wonder if maybe this is set up from a previous robot already, and I never changed it back. So go ahead and set yours up so it matches that. One more time, in Properties, in TCP/IPv4 Properties. Just make sure you have these numbers. So gateway is blank. IP address is 192.168.69.2. Subnet mask is 255, 255, 255, and 0. And then our preferred DNS server, I guess you can also leave that blank, but 192.168.69.1. Okay, now what we can do is, so I'm going to just say OK here and close this. I'll leave that open just in case we have to go back there. What I can do now is instead of going to radio.local, we can go to this address, which is 192.168.69.1. So I can just type that in, 192.168.69.1. And there is the radio instantly popping up. So when you use the name radio.local, it tries to register that name in the Windows, and Windows then knows that that name means go to this IP address. Sometimes that doesn't work, as we found out. When you say go to this IP address, it always works. Okay, now we're going to change. So we're Robot Radio. We're going to put our team number in. So whatever your team number is, put it in there. We have the suffix. This is what's going to pop up after the wireless network that it shows up. And we can put a WPA key in for 6 gigahertz connection. What that means is this is going to try to connect to, or would try to connect to, that 6 gigahertz radio. But let's just do the passwords. We're going to do both the passwords the same. I'm just going to make them both be, it has to be 8 characters long. So I'll do FRC, nope, I'll do first and then the team number, 2378. Maybe I can remember that. In theory, you want everybody on your team to know this. In theory, I don't think it needs to be very secure. Okay. And there is a note down here which says, hey, if you're at a competition, you have to go take this radio and get it set up for the competition. When you get it set up for the competition, it's going to wipe all this out, which means when you come home after your first event, you have to do this radio configuration again to bring it back to the setup that you can use to practice at home. All right, I think we're ready then, so we'll go ahead and click Configure. It says new configuration received and will be applied asynchronously. That means I think it keeps working, but it slowly applies those new settings. And what we want to do now is I want to disconnect from the radio and then see if we can connect to the radio without having the cable attached. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug that cable. Guess I'll leave it the other end in just in case we need it again. And then on the computer, now I'm looking for the wireless network of my robot that we are hoping will show up. OK, so we tried waiting a while for that to boot up. We tried turning it off and on again a few times. We tried redoing the configuration and redoing the firmware. And we just could not get the wireless to turn on that last radio. So we swapped to a different radio and did the configure button. We did the firmware and then the configure button just like we did before. And immediately it popped up. And you can see there is now that 2.4 gigahertz Wi-Fi light is lit. And it's available. So now, if I go to my computer and start looking for Wi-Fi networks, we will see that FRC 2371-high. And remember, high is that suffix we added. So that is now popping up. So I can click on that, and we'll connect to that automatically, sure. And then I can put in the key, which was first 2378, and click next. And sure, it can do whatever it wants. I'm not sure if it matters whether you click yes or no, but just click yes. Seems safer. All right, so now our laptop hopefully is connecting directly to the radio on the robot. And this will take a little bit longer than a normal wireless connection to actually come in and connect. So while that's going, because I think I have enough faith now that it's going to work, I'm going to put the zip ties back on to hold our radio in place here. All right, and we're now connected. You should see no internet secured, and that's good. You want to see no internet because we're connecting to the robot, and the robot does not have internet. But connected and secured is what we want to see here. And we're basically ready to go. We can do one final test, and that is on the, OK, so we don't need any of this stuff anymore because it's working. On this screen, we're going to run the driver station, which was the other file that downloaded way back when we got the FRC game tools. And the driver station is what we run to actually communicate with the robot, with the RoboRio on the robot. So there will be two parts that pop up. One of them will be labeled Smart Dashboard, and the other part will be the FRC driver station. Now, for the driver station, we're still not connected here. You can see there's communication light is red, robot code is red, joysticks are red. And that's fine because we haven't done a couple other steps. So this is the first tab. In the first tab, we can choose whether we want to do teleoperated, which is driver control with gamepads, or autonomous. You can enable or disable. There's also practice and test modes here. You can see sort of the communication status. This is the laptop's battery and CPU percent. One of the things that I would say is if you're using, especially if you're using like the laptop that came in the kit of parts, you always want to keep an eye on that CPU percentage, PC CPU percent. If that starts getting full or very high on that bar, that could be the cause of weird issues. So if weird stuff is happening and CPU percent is high, that's likely the cause of it. So just keep an eye on that. It shouldn't be a big deal. We can also choose what color we want to be here, as well as you can change the window size. And the color doesn't really matter for this robot at all. If we go to the next tab, this is our diagnostics tab. We can see what's connected. So it sees that we're connected to Wi-Fi, but it doesn't see the robot radio or the robot or any of those things. It also might show that there are firewalls running. If you have firewalls running, you're going to want to turn those off. So I'll go ahead and show you how to do that. You want to do Windows Defender Firewall with Advanced Security. That's what you want to look for on your Start menu. And there's Windows Defender Firewall Properties right here. OK, and you want to turn it off. And that was for the domain profile. Then you need to go to the private profile, turn it off, and then you can go to the public profile and turn it off. And once all of those are off, you can say OK. And I'll just move this off to the side. You can see that now we don't have any of those things popping up next to the firewall. That said, turning these things off is really important for FRC because we don't want anything blocking the communication between our laptop and the robot. But that said, if you're still using this laptop to go out on the internet and go to sites and stuff like that, there are times you're going to want to turn the firewalls back on because it does, it is security for your laptop. I'll leave it off right now so that this looks good. All right, the next tab this is why it's not working. We have to put our team number in here. If you don't put your team number in, it will not be able to connect. So my team number for this robot is 2378. And if you click off, then it is immediately going to update that team number and work on changing that over. So that team number will change the IP address of the computer, and it will also change the IP address of what it's looking for to connect. All right, what else? The next tab is USB ordered. This is where gamepads will show up. When we plug in a gamepad later, it's going to show up here. And then the last one, there's just some information, some other diagnostic stuff here on this final tab. that we're not particularly worried about. Okay, so now we should be able to see basically communication to the RoboRio. We still don't have code, so it's still not going to run right. If you get to this point and it doesn't work, it doesn't show up, first thing to try is to turn the robot off and turn it back on again. But if we go back and look at our driver station now, you can see the communication light has gone green, and we're reading voltage here. Also, if we go to our communications tab, you can see we can see the robot radio, and we can see the robot itself. That is the RoboRio. And so basically, this is what you should see. This set of lights should be on. We'll have robot code as green once we actually download code to the robot. And then the joysticks will turn green when we plug joysticks into the computer to be able to use. So if you get this far and this is connected and you see that communications light going green, then your robot is completely updated with firmware, and you have everything configured correctly. So you are ready to move on to the next video where we start programming. But before we go, we're going to give another special thanks to Argosy for making this all possible, to First and Andymark for parts and support, and to Team 302, Lake Orion High School, for hosting our studio.